Refinishing any type of furniture or even a jukebox is pretty simple. Just follow these steps. We're going to show you how to refinish a Seeburg Jukebox using Veneer. This Seeburg Jukebox was first introduced in 1952. It has been once painted with a white lacquer finish. My mission is to strip down all the paint and bring it down to its original wood. Then I'll add a sheet of veneer so I can stain it back to its luxurious cherry finish. The first thing that you want to do is remove all the chrome and other parts that would interfere with the veneer process. Preparing for paint removal. When you're done removing all the parts of the jukebox, lay it on its side on a large blanket. Tape off any areas you want to protect with newspaper. Purchase a paint removing stripper at any home supply store. Using a throwaway brush, brush on the paint stripper and let it sit for a few minutes until you see the paint bubbling. Then scrape the paint away using a putty knife or scraper. Removing any paint will allow the veneer to bond to the wood stronger. Repeat this process for the entire jukebox until all the paint is removed. Preparing your wood for smoothness. With all the paint removed, use steel wool grade number 1 to smooth out any imperfections. Preparing for veneer. Using plain water and a sponge, wipe down the entire jukebox. Then use a towel to dry off the wood. Once again, lay the jukebox on its side resting on a large blanket. With a large ruler, measure the length and the width of the area for veneer. Add a couple extra inches all around the area to be cut out. Now use those measurements to draw out the shape of the back on the veneer. I would use a box cutter to cut out the shape. I would also recommend birch veneer since there is less grain and it makes for a good stain. Once the shape is cut out, use it as a template for the other side of the jukebox. I decided to use veneer instead of staining the original wood because I wanted a nice clean stain. To adhere the veneer wood to the jukebox, you could use Super 77 or higher, or else veneer glue. If using Super 77 or higher, spray and saturate the back of the veneer panel. Then place it onto the jukebox area to be veneered. Then place the veneer on top of the jukebox panel. Then use an acrylic roller to smooth and adhere the veneer to the jukebox. Once the veneer is glued down to the jukebox, use a scissor to get as close to the edge and remove some of the excess overlap. Now use a razor blade to flush the veneer to the edge so you can remove any overlap. Take your time and change blades often. For covered areas, use the blade and cut an X shape in the center of that area. Then use the blade to go around the opening to make it a clean cut. Once the veneer is securely on, use very fine sandpaper to sand the edges where the two pieces of veneer meet. When working with a curve, measure the width and height of that area. Then get a putty knife and make an indentation so you can take that strip and cut along the unique curve of the jukebox where it forms. When trying to cut hard areas to reach, use an X-Acto number 11 knife. You could get into very tight areas that a straight edge razor blade can't get into. Don't rush your project. And remember to keep the two pieces of veneer butt up against each other and use super fine sandpaper to sand those edges down. All this hard work will pay off in the end. Once all the veneer is glued, wait overnight for it to dry. The next day, check the veneer for air pockets by running your hand down the side. If you feel air pockets, use an iron and set it to warm and move it slowly along that area. This will adhere it to the wood. Make sure you use a good stain like Sherwin-Williams. Test it in a small area first, or on a scrap piece of wood to see if it was mixed correctly. Using a sponge applicator, apply the stain to your wood. Reapply the stain as often as you want until the desired stain is reached. Wait the required dry time before reapplying. Right before you begin to varnish, make sure you use superfine steel wool or 600 grain wet sandpaper and begin to sand down lightly all areas of the jukebox. Then use a wet sponge to remove any dust particles and then dry off with a towel. I prefer to use spray polyurethane satin for the correct finish on a jukebox. In between the coats of polyurethane, you'll want to use wet sandpaper to smooth out the finish. I use 400 to 600 grain sandpaper to achieve the best results. Reapply the polyurethane until the desired gloss is achieved. If you happen to sand too hard and you remove the stain, don't worry. Just reapply the stain and then varnish.